Morning. So we've been learning these Gemaras here of I must say, very confusing laws. There's numerous laws about wearing tefillin. Well, we were talking about before the tefillin. We spoke about a person not being able to control themselves. Then now we're talking about tefillin, which is a whole new thing. And in Shulchan Aruch, there's numerous sections that deal with these type of issues. Number one, in the laws of tefillin, taking tefillin into a bathroom, whole sections on this, especially because in the olden days, they had a big issue. What do you do with your tefillin? And, they didn't have a place to put it. I think the only practical situation that I can think of nowadays would be if a person's in the airport. Where do you put your tefillin? No one wants to trust you with your you don't want to trust anyone else with your bag. And, there's no Jews around that's on your flight that what do you do with your tefillin? So this would be like maybe the only way we can relate to these type of laws. But the Gemara that we're dealing with is dealing with a very serious issue that would happen in those days. They had the tefillin on, and they had nowhere to put them. You can't. They're by a bathroom. They're by a field. They need to use the bathroom. And what do you do with your tefillin? And so to us, it's very shocking to think of these laws that you would bring tefillin inside a bathroom. It's beyond our understanding how they could even do such a thing. But there are, as we see, the rabbis permitted it because this was the only option. To the extent that the rabbis felt better to take it inside than to leave it outside. Even if there was a wall, you could stick it in, and that's what the rabbis argue about, and that's what we've been learning. But I must say the laws are confusing. It's not clear. There are numerous details to these laws, and we'll try to go through them and get as much as we can out of them. But as I say, the practicality is not so much. It's not so applicable nowadays. And the only example that we could say is similar is maybe an airport, or and you have nowhere to leave. You can't leave your bag. You can't leave your tefillin there. Now, and the real practicality of these laws is when you're flying on an airline that doesn't let you take any carry-ons. So then you actually just have your tefillin, and you didn't take anything else with you. So you have no bag to even put them in. Nowadays they're starting to charge for every little thing that you do. You check a bag, for sure you got to pay a carry-on. A lot of airlines are starting to charge for, and so you might somehow get a little personal item. So you might bring your tefillin with you and nothing else, and you're going on a one-day trip. So where do you put your tefillin in that scenario? Now, we did see a interesting halacha here about a tefach, that if the tefillin is in a bag that actually has the space of a tefach without the tefillin in it. So if the tefillin if you would take the tefillin out and you could fit your hand in the tefillin bag, I'm assuming in both width and length, although it doesn't say clearly, but that's my understanding. If the tefillin could handle the width of your hand and the length of your tefach, which is the hand breadth, that is considered an oihel, and it sounds like it would be permissible to bring the tefillin bag even into the bathroom, or you could put it on, it could be placed on the floor. Because it's considered an oihel, a tent. Now, normally we say that a bag that's set aside for tefillin that's not considered like a extra bag to put the tefillin in, because that bag is set aside for tefillin. But our Gemara is telling us, and I see it is brought in Shulchan Aruch, that if there is a tefach, if there is a space of the space of a tefach, a handbreadth, that does allow the that allows you to place that you could put the tefillin, that that's good enough for your tefillin to be placed in. I'm just pulling up here something on the computer. The bag needs to have a tefach before the tefillin are placed inside, even if they have less than a tefach of space after the tefillin are put inside. So that's the understanding of this Gemara. So that's an interesting halacha. And
I'm printing. Hold on.
What I would like to look into this further, but it sounds to me like most tefillin bags, I mean, I guess I should check my bag, but I think most tefillin bags would have that tefach. I guess I shouldn't say that unless I check it physically, but I'm wondering if what that would mean. Could you actually take your tefillin bag into the bathroom? If you just have a bag of, pair of tefillin with its bag, us married people that have taluses, or Sephardic people, or that wear talus, even if they're not married, we have it a little easier because the bag that carries the tefillin, also there's a bag for the talus that you put the tefillin in also. Since that bag carries other items, it's not set aside for a talus, it's not set aside for tefillin. And that bag would make it a lot easier. You could take that bag, it sounds like for sure you could take that bag into the bathroom. But my question is, let's say you only have a tefillin bag. If you only have a tefillin bag, it sounds from here, if that tefillin bag has a measurement of a tefach on a tefach, that should be permissible to bring into a bathroom. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my bag and I see it's tefach on tefach, even with the tefillin in it.
What that would mean, right? A handbreadth of extra space.
No, the bag itself still has a handbreadth of on a handbreadth, more than a handbreadth, even with the tefillin in it. But I'm thinking in those days, if they had the bags, why couldn't they think of attach a string to it so you can put it on your shoulder instead of putting it on the floor?
Right.
Just hang it over your shoulder. Then, if you carry it in,
Right. So there's two opinions that discuss this Gemara. One of them explains we're dealing with putting tefillin on the floor. The other one explains bringing tefillin into the bathroom.
Right.
So if it's regarding bringing tefillin in the bathroom, it doesn't help putting the string over it. The string is not going to help because I
still wouldn't put it on the floor. The floors are dirty.
Right, but it's in a bag.
So the bag gets dirty. I still wouldn't put it on the floor.
Okay, it's the bag, right? But it's the bag. But so it doesn't help having the string regarding bringing it into a bathroom. Regarding putting it on the floor, that does seem to be an option.
Rabbi.
Yes, Susan.
I just want to ask something. Usually, if you're going to go someplace and you're going to have your tefillin with you, aren't you going to wear a coat with big pockets? Doesn't that satisfy if you need to go to the bathroom? That amount of space is satisfied if your tefillin bag is in your pocket in your coat. Yeah,
it's a good question, and the reason you're asking that question is you remember the old days tefillin. They were the size. They were tiny, the size of a quarter.
Yes.
They used to have tiny tefillin. Stick them in your pocket. Nowadays, they don't make tefillin like that. Nowadays, tefillin is nice and decent size. And the size of the tefillin makes it much easier for them to write the tefillin, and they write it a little bigger. Additionally, there are opinions according to Kabbalah that tefillin should be daled al daled. There are opinions that tefillin should be 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters.
Oh,
So now, so they try to be strict. Many try to be machmir. They try to be strict to cover it, even the Kabbalistic writings.
I
That
see.
tefillin should be that size. And
Yeah.
basically, the tefillins nowadays,
different, very different.
they're all much bigger than they used to be. And so to fit them in a pocket is not as anywhere
Right.
near. I mean, you might find that you could here and there, but it's the normal pockets are not going to handle your
Right.
tefillin.
I didn't realize that. Thank you.
And that's if someone's wearing a jacket. And not everyone wears a jacket. That's you're right. It's the proper attire would be to wear a jacket, but it's not always done, especially in Florida where it's very hot here. There's there's a lot of people who just put the tefillin on without a jacket.
Right. Thank you.
So anyway, going back to the Gemara, let's try to just go over the Gemara again. It's complicated, but let's just try to go over it outside, and then we'll go from there. Especially because it's if we don't go over it, we're not going to remember anything, even though it's not so practical. At least we should try to remember some of the points. So the Gemara started with the law of if a person needs to use the bathroom, and we gave the amount of 72 minutes, which is the amount of time it takes to walk a parsa. And there's an argument among the commentaries of the Gemara if that means is that fine to daven if a person can control themselves. They feel that they need to use the bathroom, but they definitely could wait 72 minutes. So in that scenario, are they really prohibited from davening? And just if they davened, it's okay, or is it fine? Is it okay? No problem to daven in that scenario. That's what there is an argument if in that scenario what the meaning of the Gemara is. Does it mean mutter, or does it mean it's usser? Does it mean it's permissible, or does it mean it's not allowed? But it's okay. But it's done, and it's okay. So that was one thing. Then we had a Gemara about entering a bathroom and putting your tefillin. Your person's entering the bathroom to defecate, and he has to remove the tefillin 4 ames away. And we mentioned that's talking about a beis hakisei kavua, a bathroom that has excrement in it. If it's a bathroom arai, a temporary bathroom that doesn't have excrement, so which means basically it was never used as a bathroom, place in the field. So there you could take your tefillin off right there. And when you leave, you will need to go away 4 amos. You will need to distance yourself 4 amos, 6 to 8 feet. And then we had a question in the Gemara, which was very surprising that the Gemara is asking this, but it says, could a person urinate with the tefillin on in a bathroom that sounds like it's a bathroom kavua, that it's established, which means it has excrement in it. And so the Gemara was asking, would you be allowed, if you're not going to defecate, you're just going to urinate, would that be allowed? So we did mention that there's different opinions how to understand this Gemara. The one opinion is that really you don't translate it as beis hakisei kavua, that it should just be a beis hakisei. It's just a bathroom. It means really temporary, or it's planning on becoming a permanent bathroom, or it's a beis hakisei tzanua, but it's not a beis hakisei kavua. It's not an established bathroom. That's the way some commentaries understand this. Otherwise, they can't understand how the previous Gemara says you got to take your tefillin off 4 amos before the bathroom. And here we're telling you, maybe Gemara's thinking maybe you could even enter with the tefillin on. How could that be? So to answer that question, a lot of the commentaries want to say that this is not talking about an established bathroom. There's no excrement in it. But there is an opinion that says that we are dealing with such a case, that it really is a Beis HaKisei Kavua, and the law of separating 4 amos is only when a person is going there to defecate. That's when you need to you have to distance yourself 4 amos and take off your tefillin. If you're not going there for that purpose, to defecate, then a person does not need to remove their tefillin 4 amos away. And you could even enter such a bathroom. Which to us seems very surprising, but that's one of the commentaries, the way they understand this Gemara. So the law of Dalet Amos, the law of 4 amos, according to this opinion, is only because a person is defecating there. Now, let me just pull that up in Shulchan Aruch. I see in chapter 53. Right. It doesn't really deal with tefillin. Yeah. Okay. So in chapter 83, it does talk about reciting Shema next to a bathroom, but it doesn't really deal with tefillin. So I guess that's really, okay, it's not an issue. Okay, so continuing our Gemara, the Gemara then mentions this question. So would you be allowed to urinate in such a bathroom with your tefillin on? And the Gemara has an argument, and they asked, so Ravina said it's permissible. Ravada Bar Masa said it's prohibited. They asked Rava. Rava said it's prohibited, but he said the reason. What's the reason? The reason is because we're afraid a person will end up, might defecate there. Why might they defecate there? Because once they urinate, they might want to defecate. And this is a bathroom that is used for number 2. And therefore, there's reason to think that that person might do that. So what comes out from this Gemara is that if a person wants to enter just a bathroom that has a urinal, let's say there was such a person, or they want to urinate in the field. So according to this, this is not a place to defecate. Therefore, it would seem to be permissible. But then the Gemara says, but there might be an issue of Shema Yafiach Behen. Person might end up passing gas. Now, passing gas, that could be an issue. Now, not every Gemara has that version. So therefore, there could be reason to permit it. Yes, David.
I'm a little stuck on this.
Just 1 second, David. I'm going to mute everyone, and then you can unmute yourself. Okay, unmute yourself, David. And yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little stuck on this story with the prostitute who stole the tefillin.
Oh, I'm just about to get to that.
Oh, I thought you did that already.
No, you're remembering from yesterday.
Right,
so,
from yesterday.
Yeah. I'm going over yesterday's Gemara.
Oh,
but I
okay.
didn't get up to that. Just that's the next piece. So now we have the next brisa, and the brisa here says that you're entering this Beis HaKisei Kavor, you're entering this permanent bathroom, and you have to remove your tefillin 4 amos away, place them into a chaloin, into the window in the wall outside by the street, and then you enter. And then when you leave, you got to move 4 amos away and put them on. That's the words of Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says you bring them with you, and you enter, hold them in your hand. And the reason why you would hold them in your hand is it seems that you could have a better grip, rather than Rabbi Akiva says put them in your clothing and enter. And they ask, does it mean in the clothing? And the Gemara answers, the Gemara says with clothing, they might fall because you'll forget that they're in the clothing. So the Gemara answers, hold them, wrap them in your clothing, and hold them in your hand. But Beis Hillel is not comfortable with that. They're afraid that if you're holding them in your clothing and in your hand, you don't have the best grip, and they might fall out. So therefore, they argue on Rabbi Akiva. But Rabbi Akiva says you hold them in your clothes, in your hand, and you enter. And the Gemara then says that you put them in the hole in the wall, which is near the bathroom. And how does that? What does Rabbi Akiva mean? First, he says you're holding them in your clothing, wrap them in your clothes and in your hand, and then he says you put them in the wall, and which is on the inside side of the wall. And so the commentaries explain that that Rabbi Akiva is saying that you could do either this or either that. If you could hold them, fine. If you can't, then put them in the wall. I think I saw somewhere where it said if your clothing is too tight, so you can't wrap them in your clothing because your clothes is too tight, so then you put them in the wall. That's just a practical understanding of what Rebbe Akiva is saying. Rebbe Akiva is saying basically your best is hold them in your clothing, and for whatever reason, if you can't, you put them in the wall. So then the Gemara brings this story that David was mentioning, and mentions that there was a student. First of all, it says that don't put them in the like Beis Shammai says, don't put them in the wall on the outside because we're afraid someone might take them and then you'll come to be they'll suspect you for sinning. And then there was a story of a student that he put the tefillin on the outside of the wall, and a prostitute came and took them, and then she came to the Beis Medrash and she said, "Look at this phony. This so and so gave this as my payment for prostitution." And when the student heard about this, he went up to the roof, he fell, and he died. Now, one of the commentaries explains that he didn't commit suicide. He went up to the roof to try to so to speak, think about what just occurred, to calm down, but he ended up falling off and dying. Another explanation is, I don't know where I saw this, or maybe it's just a thought that came to me, but I have a note in my Gemara that I once wrote that maybe this is a source that often when someone commits suicide, there's a question: are they allowed to be buried in a Jewish cemetery? Because committing suicide is considered a terrible prohibition. So what we normally assume, or do you not if they can be buried in a Jewish cemetery? Maybe the question is if you sit shiva, if they commit suicide. And so I should look it up what exactly the discussion is. There's definitely a discussion about committing suicide. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe I don't see Isaac here. Isaac, are you here? I guess not. There is a discussion about someone committing suicide. So the common halacha is that we consider them like any other yid in halacha. Why? Because when they commit suicide, we assume while they're falling, they regret committing suicide. While they are falling, they probably don't want to do what they did, and it's too late. And therefore, we allow them the regular Jewish rights. Let me just take a look here. 1 second. from the perspective of halacha, so what are the halachic ramifications of suicide? And so it says, one who commits suicide is guilty of murder will be held accountable in heavenly court. So that's what it says in Maimonides. And given that suicide is considered such a reprehensible act, Maimonides writes that one who commits suicide, we withhold all traditional rites and rituals from him, such as mourning for him, eulogizing him, but any rite or ritual that is performed as an honor for the living is not withheld. Maimonides further implies that one who commits suicide has no share in the world to come. With respect to the burial, Jewish community does nevertheless ensure that the suicide receives a burial. However, the question often arises whether the suicide victim can be buried in a Jewish cemetery. The classic halachic works do not mention this restriction when discussing the law of suicide. However, there are more general ruling mentioned in the Talmud that one does not bury a wicked person or a righteous person. And there are halachic experts who have applied this general rule to suicide, stating that insofar as a person's death itself was an act of sin, we have no choice but to consider him wicked and to apply this restriction. It should be noted, though, that applying this restriction does not preclude a suicide from being buried in a Jewish cemetery, just mandates that he be buried at a distance from others. Okay, so so I guess so that's the, and then with respect to Kaddish. Okay, so just making sure, just looking up what we're dealing with. So the question would be about eulogy, a Kaddish, and so on. So normally what we say is that person regrets it. And so maybe that's the meaning of when the Gemara says v'nafal, that even though they might have pushed themselves off the wall, but we look at it as nafal, they fell, because after they push themselves off, after they jump off, they regret it, and it's considered like they have they can't save themselves now. It's too late, and therefore it uses the term nafal, fell, even though we assume it means they committed suicide. Now, at that time, they decreed that a person should not leave their tefillin outside. Instead, they should hold them inside the bathroom and enter in their clothing, hold them with their clothing in their hand and enter. Now, David had a question on this. David.
Yeah, on one hand, you can't ask a question on a story that happened, but I'm just wondering, the student, when he did this, he's leading everybody else to believe that he was guilty of the sin by not answering, because silence under an accusation, a person's being accused and the person's silent, he's sort of saying, okay, I go along with what you're saying, otherwise I would protest. So he's leading his colleagues to suspect him of, he must have been guilty of this sin. Otherwise, why would he kill himself?
Well, I don't see it that way. The embarrassment of being suspected of such a thing, and maybe thinking that people aren't going to believe him if he says it's not true. It's almost like, they have the evidence seems pretty clear. So whatever he says, maybe he doesn't believe people are going to trust him. So maybe he did deny it in the base medrash, and then he went up, and then but he saw people weren't believing him, but whatever the case is, I mean, being suspected of something is a very, very delicate and fragile situation, because, as they say, there's no if there's smoke, there's a fire. And so, many people like to rely on these rumors, and that's why it's very dangerous to be part of a rumor, to help forward a rumor around. You could ruin someone's life to the extent that they could commit suicide. So you got to be careful. That's why it's such a, nowadays, one of the biggest issues is abuse, pedophilia. That's one of the biggest issues that go around. We're all nervous that one of the teachers or one of this, someone, and the problem is if you suspect someone and you do have to be worried always. But at the same time, if you spread a rumor, you could simply ruin their life. You ruin their livelihood. You ruin their life. So it's a very delicate balance until you're 100% sure before you spread a rumor. So it's a big issue. It's a very, very big issue, and that's why here you look at what happened. I mean, it's sad. Any such a situation. Yes, Ezra.
I think Ben was before me, Rabbi.
Oh, Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to say two things. As far as David's mentioning, the guy did not go up to the roof and jumped off. He went to the roof and it says he fell off. So it's not an admission of anything. But also, I think I heard that if somebody commits suicide, he's buried by the fence of the cemetery.
So that might be because, as I read, that maybe a person's not, you don't bury a wicked person next to a righteous person. But I don't know if we follow that, because I think we assume that the person regretted it, and therefore we give them a regular burial. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know. No one should ever know of such a thing. And about what you said about he fell off, I mentioned that it does seem surprising, like what does this mean? So I mentioned one understanding of it is he, as you said, that he did fall off, but I did mention another explanation that we often use that term, that he fell off. It doesn't, we like a proper language. We don't want to say he jumped off. We just say he fell off, but really the meaning is that he jumped off. And I said, maybe the reason why it uses that term, nafal, also is because we assume after he jumped, he regretted it. Maybe it's just like a little hint, but I don't have any source for that. It's just a thought. Okay, so Ezra, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, from the way it's written, the fact that the next part is that the rabbis, because of this incident, said they made the takana that they, as far as the tefillin is concerned, so had they believed her, they would never have made this takana. That's number one. The second question is, why didn't they go after her? She caused the death. How come nothing's being said about the fact that she caused the person to die?
So that, that's an interesting question, but what we see here is that when you physically kill someone, then obviously it's that's a scenario where we would go after the person and bring them to justice. But when you spiritually kill someone, or you indirectly kill someone, here you cause them embarrassment that caused him to commit suicide. It's considered indirect. Now, in heaven, will she be punished severely? I'm sure she will, from the heavenly court. But in a physical court, if you embarrass someone and cause them to commit suicide, it's really indirect. So I don't think a court can really do much. I mean, she lied about the story. She did cause a terrible thing, but it's an indirect death. You can't, it's not going to be she's not going to get the death penalty for that. But But you're right, it is a terrible, terrible thing that she did. So, so anyway, well, my time is up. We'll have to continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Sei gesund, everyone. We'll see you later.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rabbi.
Everyone.